what's going on everybody? It's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a first look at the AYA Neo Air. So I've actually been really excited about this device, and I've had it in my possession for the last few days messing around with it. And I absolutely love the form factor they came up with, and the screen on this thing is absolutely beautiful. It's an OLED display, and I haven't seen anything like this in an x86 handheld yet. But first things first, let's go ahead and get this thing unboxed. I gotta say, they've done a standout job when it comes to their packaging for their newer handhelds, and this is no different. I mean, this is really great quality, and it does make the unboxing experience super enjoyable. Down here, we've got our accessories. It comes with a 65-watt wall charger. It also comes with some USB Type-C to full-size USB adapters, and some wall adapters for the included chargers, so you can get up and running no matter where you are in the world. But all the magic really happens up here. It comes with a manual for the Air itself. It'll tell you everything you need to know about the device. They've also included a dedicated manual to AYA space, and this is something we will be taking a look at. Really nice to have on a handheld like this. But the main bread and butter here is the Air itself. I mean, they've done a really great job designing this handheld. It definitely looks and feels premium, and remember, this is the Air. They're also offering a Lite with less RAM and less storage, and they're also offering a Pro with a bigger battery and an option for a more powerful APU. But the way this one sits, I mean, it looks so good. I love this two-tone up top here. We've got that blue and kind of pink. We've also got our power button / fingerprint reader up top. So if I want to log in, I can log in super quickly from that. So obviously we've got the white version, but they're also offering a black version and a pink version with the same specs here. It's really up to you. If I had to choose, I would have went with the white version here. I just think it looks really, really clean. But yeah, for being such a small form factor handheld, when you compare it to some of the others they released, this thing is packed with tech. We've got dual stereo speakers, Wi-Fi 6, it's got Bluetooth 5.2, we've got that fingerprint sensor up top, and it's also utilizing Hall sensors in the joysticks and the triggers. And down here, we've got our micro SD card slot, a 3.5mm audio jack, and USB Type-C for charging or video out. Moving around to the top of the device, as you can see, we've got our shoulder buttons, we've got those analog triggers, some ventilation for that APU, another USB Type-C port, our volume rocker, and our power / fingerprint reader, all up top here. Moving around to the back, not much going on here, but we do have plenty of ventilation for that APU. A very ergonomical design. This fits in the hand perfectly fine, and I just love how clean this whole unit looks. And having these lit rings around the analog sticks is just icing on the cake in my opinion. And like I mentioned, this is using Hall-based sensors for the analog sticks and the triggers. Now if you're not familiar with that, instead of using a physical connection, this actually uses a magnetic field to detect the input. So in theory, we should have more precise controls, longer life out of them, and no drift at all when it comes to the analog sticks on this unit. The triggers around back feel great. There's plenty of throw here, and I'm a huge fan of this because I do love playing racing games on my handhelds, be it, emulation or PC games, and having good linear triggers is a must for me, and this definitely has them. Before we move any further, I did want to give you a rundown on the specs here. So for the APU, we've got the Ryzen 5 5560. Now this is based on Zen 3, unlike the 5500U, which is based on Zen 2. We've got 6 cores, 12 threads, a base clock of 2.3 GHz, and a boost up to 4.0. 16 GB of LPDDR4X RAM running at 4,266 MHz. This is utilizing a Radeon 6 iGPU at 1600 MHz. We've also got a 512 GB M.2 SSD, and yes, this is user replaceable. A 5.5-inch OLED 1080p display with 300 nits of brightness. Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, dual stereo speakers, a 28 watt-hour battery, and in this video I will be running Windows 11, but in the future they're going to be offering AYA OS, which is based on Linux, and I'm sure we could install a Linux variant on it like it is right now. And just to give you an idea of the size, I wanted to compare this to some other handhelds on the market right now. Here's the Switch Lite, and it is coming in at about the same size. It's a bit thicker given we have to have more cooling for that x86 CPU. Next up, we've got the OLED Switch, which is definitely going to come in with a bigger screen, but it is a much larger form factor. And finally, the Steam Deck, which absolutely dwarfs this unit. As you can see here, it's just a lot bigger, so we can't even cover up that Steam Deck with it. The Steam Deck is coming in thicker, it is heavier, but again, we're not going to get as much power out of the Air as we would with the Steam Deck. But if you're looking for a small form factor, pocketable x86 handheld, then the Air might have you covered. So since this is a gaming handheld, I figured we'd go ahead and test out at least one game before we move over to the other features. And I did want to show you these analog triggers in action. With something like Forza Horizon 5, they work out really well. I mean, you can hold that, you can get your launch control going, and it just gives you really good control over the gas and brake, especially if you're into drifting with these racing games. So obviously we're playing Forza Horizon 5 right now. We're at low settings, 720p, and performance is actually pretty decent, but we are at 15 watts on that APU. So from ISpace, which is something we'll take a look at next, we can go from 5 watts up to 12 watts, but you can always use a third-party application to take it up a bit higher. Now you got to consider we've only got a 28 watt-hour battery here, so at 15 watts you're not going to get a ton of battery life, but like I said, we can go down to 5 up to 12 from ISpace, but I gotta say 15 watts really does liven this little handheld up. The overall layout looks really good. I mean, it's a basic handheld layout. We've got our action buttons, we've got our analog sticks, our D-pad, and we will test this D-pad after we take a look at this software. We've got our start and select, and we've got 2 extra buttons over here. This one is what I call my home button. This will basically bring us out of any app right back to the desktop. And then we've got our AYA button. So if we tap it once, it'll bring up our little overlay here. We can change the TDP. Gives us some information on what's going on with the handheld. We can change the volume, brightness, and the fan curve. But we've also got ISpace built in, so if we hold that button, it'll bring us right there. So we've got a nice little game launcher, and it does download artwork for us, gives us some information about the game. Go up to the top here, we can just go straight to the game section. And we've also got this assistant section, and this is going to come in really handy if you want to customize everything. Give us a look at what all the buttons do, a little more information, and from here, we can actually go into an interactive 3D model of the handheld and adjust and remap everything on this unit. So it's actually really simple to use. We can adjust the dead zones of the analog sticks, the sensitivity and everything like that. We can remap the face buttons. We can change the rumble intensity. I mean, everything you want to adjust on this is available through this menu, and the ISpace has definitely been upgraded since the last time I checked it out. They're constantly putting out updates, and from ISpace we can actually go through and update the BIOS. We can download new firmware for the controllers. So if there's something that needs to be fixed on the software side of things by AYA, we can do it from ISpace really easily. Moving over to a little bit of D-pad testing, here we have Street Fighter V, and I love the way this D-pad feels. It's raised up a bit more than I'm used to, but I kind of like the way it feels. They are using conductive pads and not micro switches here, so it gives you that genuine D-pad feel. And I haven't missed any of these special moves. I've also tested this out with a little bit of Dreamcast emulation. One of my go-to tests is Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and it works out really well. I definitely wanted to test out a few more PC games in this video. So first up, we've got the original Skyrim. I've got a low-medium mix where it's 720p, and this would probably run at 1080p low. I will be doing some more testing with this, and I'll throw it back in my next video, and we'll see how high we can take this game. But overall, really playable like this. We're at a constant 60 with it. Next up, we've got The Witcher 3, where it's 720p low, and I can get an average of around 40 FPS out of this game. I was actually expecting a little more out of it. I did take it up to 15 watts and able to get this kind of performance out of it, so locking this at 30 is probably going to be the way to go. And this chip does have more to offer. I mean, we could take this up to 25 watts, but again, we're limited on the cooling capacity given that it's such a small handheld, and that 28 watt-hour battery. At 25 watts, we wouldn't get much runtime at all out of this unit. I also wanted to test one of my newer favorite 2D games. We've got Shredder's Revenge, and we're set at 8 watts. Looking really good here. I expected it to run pretty well, but at 5 watts, I was still getting a few stutters here and there, so I just took it up to 8. And I'd say around 6.5 would be the way to go, so you would need to use a third-party application to set it at 6.5 watts. Now it's time to move over to a little bit of emulation, and I think this is where this little handheld's going to shine. Here's PSP using the standalone version of PPSSPP, Chains of Olympus, 3x resolution, Vulkan backend. I mean, it looks great on this screen here, and we're at a constant 60. You're not going to have any issues with PSP emulation on this device. Even something like Killzone at 2x and Midnight Club at 3x run at full speed. Next up, PS2 using PPSSPP with the DirectX 11 backend. I'm also going to be testing Vulkan in my next video with their development build, so keep an eye out. But even just using DirectX 11 works really well with PS2 emulation on the AYA Neo Air. Another emulator that works really well on the Air is Dolphin, and going into this I knew we'd have a great time with it for Gamecube and Wii. We're at 720p right now, Vulkan back in, we're set at 12 watts, and at native you can actually get away by running this at about 7 watts, but if you want to take it up, we could go to 1080 at 15 watts. And the final emulator we're testing in this video is PS3. This was actually pretty impressive, but I did have to take it up to 15 watts. Ninja Gaiden, Sigma, Vulkan back in, 720p, running at 60. Now, I know that not every single PS3 game is going to run at full speed on this device, especially given the TDP we're at right now, but there's a lot of stuff that will run at full speed on the Air. So far, really digging the Air, love the form factor, and as you can see, it's not that much bigger than a PS Vita. I love the screen on this thing, it is absolutely beautiful. I completely understand that it's not the most powerful handheld on the market, but that wasn't the point from the developers in the first place. They wanted to make a thin and light x86 powered handheld that would fit in your pocket, and this thing definitely does that. And it actually handles emulation very, very well. I will have a full emulation showcase video coming up, so if you're interested in checking that out, make sure you hit that subscribe button and maybe turn notifications on so you know when I post the next one. But when it comes to my final review video, let me know in the comments below what you want to see, be it more games, applications, a certain operating system running on this unit. We'll definitely be doing some battery testing and things like that. So let me know what you want to see down below. But that's going to wrap it up for my first look video. If you're interested in learning more, maybe even back in the Indiegogo, I will leave a couple links in the description. And like always, thanks for watching.